By the late 1970s, heavy metal was in a weird spot. The bands that invented the genre seemed to be disappearing. Black Sabbath was struggling with drugs, lineup changes, and declining creativity. Led Zeppelin, once the biggest band in the world, had broken up after the tragic death of John Bonham. Deep Purple, who had laid the foundation for fast technical playing, were constantly breaking up and reforming with different members. For many, it looked like heavy metal might have been just a short-lived experiment of the 1970s, a phase of loud guitars and dark lyrics that had already run its course. Meanwhile, something else was taking over the UK. Punk had exploded in 1976 and 1977 with the Sex Pistols, the Clash, and the Damned sneering at the old guard. They mocked long guitar solos, rejected technical musicianship, and embraced a raw do-it-yourself ethic. Punk made heavy rock look outdated and bloated. At the same time, disco was dominating radio. Pop music was shinier, more polished, and more mainstream than ever. New wave bands like Blondie, The Cars, and Talking Heads were defining what youth music looked like going into the 80s. For metal, the outlook was bleak, but in the shadows, something was happening. A new generation of working-class kids across Britain were picking up guitars, writing songs, and playing small clubs. They were inspired by Sabbath's heaviness, by Punk's energy, and by the desire to be louder and faster than anything before. They didn't have big record labels or big budgets. What they had were riffs. And in the years between 1979 and 1983, this explosion of new British bands would redefine what heavy metal was. They called it the new wave of British heavy metal. And it didn't just save heavy metal, it created the blueprint for every form of modern metal that came after it. The term new wave of British heavy metal first appeared in 1979, coined by journalist Jeff Barton in Sounds magazine. At the time, Barton was writing about a flood of new heavy bands coming out of the UK. These weren't established acts on record labels, they were underground bands releasing singles and demos on tiny independent labels and playing sweaty clubs in working class towns. What set them apart? Their speed. New wave of British heavy metal bands played faster than the metal bands before them, borrowing from the urgency of punk. Their riffs. The guitar was the star. Crunchy, sharp, galloping riffs defined the sound. Their themes. Lyrics mixed mythology, fantasy, street-level grit, and working-class identity. And their DIY spirit. Without major label support, many bands pressed their own vinyl singles, sold them at gigs, and built followings through the word of mouth. They also had fan culture. New wave of British heavy metal wasn't just about bands, it was about the fans in denim jackets, covered in patches, trading tapes, and building a community. This wasn't just music, it was a movement. If one band defined the new wave of British heavy metal, it was Iron Maiden. Formed in East London in 1975 by bassist Steve Harris, Maiden went through endless lineup changes before finally stabilizing at the end of the decade. Their first big break came with the release of their self-titled album in 1980, and from the start, Iron Maiden stood out. Their music was fast and precise, filled with galloping bass lines and harmonized guitar leads. Their lyrics drew on mythology, literature, and history, not just sex and rebellion. And they had Eddie the Head, their terrifying undead mascot, who became as famous as the band itself. Songs like Venom of the Opera, Running Free, and Iron Maiden instantly became fan favorites. But the real turning point came in 1982 when Bruce Dickinson replaced the original singer, Paul Di'Anno. With Dickinson's soaring operatic voice, Iron Maiden transformed from a promising band into a global force. Albums like Number of the Beast, Peace of Mind, and Power Slave became instant classics. By the mid-1980s, Iron Maiden were playing arenas around the world, carrying the new wave of British heavy metal flag higher than anyone else. While Iron Maiden went for power and heaviness, Def Leppard took a different path. Formed in Sheffield in 1977, Def Leppard were teenagers when they joined the wave. Their early music, especially their debut On Through the Night in 1980, fit the new wave of British heavy metal mold, loud, fast, and riff-driven. But with producer Mutt Lange, Def Leppard shifted toward a more polished, radio-friendly sound. Albums like High and Dry, Pyromania, and especially Hysteria in 1987 made them global superstars. While some purists argue Def Leppard sold out, there's no denying they started as part of the new wave of British heavy metal. They proved the movement wasn't just underground, it could conquer MTV and mainstream rock radio. If Iron Maiden were the innovators and Def Leppard were the crossover stars, Saxon were the working class backbone of new wave of British heavy metal. Hailing from Barnsley, Yorkshire, Saxon embodied the spirit of the movement. Their 1980 album Wheels of Steel became a new wave of British heavy metal anthem, with songs like Motorcycle Man and 747 capturing both grit and melody. But it was their 1981 album Denim and Leather that solidified Saxon's legacy. The title track became a rallying cry for the entire movement. Saxon may not have reached the global superstardom of of Maiden or Leppard, but they remained loyal to their fans and true to their sound. Decades later, they're still releasing albums and headlining festivals, respected as one of new wave of British heavy metal's most enduring forces. No band's influence looms larger in hindsight than Diamond Head. Their 1980 debut, Lightning to the Nations, wasn't a huge commercial hit at the time, but years later it would be rediscovered by American thrash bands, especially Metallica. Songs like Am I Evil, The Prince, and Helpless were all covered by Metallica in their early years, bringing Diamond Head's music to millions who had never heard the originals. In many ways, Diamond Head wrote the blueprint for thrash metal: fast, aggressive riffs combined with epic song structures. Without them, there may have never been a Metallica, a Megadeth, or Slayer as we know them. While many new wave of British heavy metal bands leaned toward melody and anthems, Venom took a darker path. Formed in Newcastle, Venom released Welcome to Hell in 1981, followed by Black Metal in 1982. These albums were raw, chaotic, and drenched in satanic imagery. Critics dismissed Venom as sloppy, but fans saw something new, a blueprint for extreme music. Their speed and aggression influenced thrash, while their imagery and atmosphere inspired the birth of black metal in Norway years later. Venom may not have been technically precise, but their attitude reshaped heavy music forever. New wave of British heavy metal wasn't just about the big names. Hundreds of bands emerged at this time, each contributing to the movement in their own way. Tigers of Pantang blended blues and hard rock with new wave of British heavy metal energy. Angel Witch delivered darker, doomier sounds that influenced later doom and occult bands. Raven pioneered athletic rock, inspiring early thrash bands with their high-energy performances. And Girl School broke barriers as one of the first all-female metal bands, touring with Motorhead and proving women belonged in heavy metal. Most of these bands didn't reach global superstardom, but their influence trickled down through generations of metal. What really made the new wave of British heavy metal a movement was the fans. This was the era of denim jackets covered in patches, of trading cassette tapes across the country, of mailing in money to small labels to get a 7-inch vinyl single. Magazines like Sounds and later Kerrang! Gave coverage to bands the mainstream ignored. Independent labels like Neat Records and Bronze gave unknowns a chance. Fans packed into tiny pubs and community halls to see bands that might one day headline arenas. New wave of British heavy metal wasn't just music. It was a community, built by fans who lived and breathed heavy metal music. The new wave of British heavy metal's influence cannot be overstated. They influenced thrash metal. Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, and Megadeth all cited new wave of British heavy metal bands as key influences. Power metal, Iron Maiden's galloping riffs and epic lyrics laid the foundation for bands like Halloween, Blind Guardian, and Dragon Force. Extreme metal, Venom gave black and death metal their identity. Modern metal, even today, bands like Trivium, Ghost, and Avenged Sevenfold draw directly from new wave of British heavy metal's sound and style. New wave of British heavy metal proved that metal wasn't just a fad. It was an evolving, unstoppable force. New wave of British heavy metal was more than just a collection of bands. It was a movement. A moment when a new generation of working class kids picked up guitars and reinvented what heavy metal could be. It took metal out of the ashes in the 1970s, injected it with punk's fire, and launched it into the atmosphere. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and come check me out on my next one. I try to do 3 or 4 videos on this channel a week now. I used to only do one on every Friday and every Monday, but I'm enjoying doing this channel so much that I'm kind of up in my game a little bit. I'm trying to do 3 or 4 a week, but I'm definitely going to hit Monday, and I'm definitely going to hit Friday every week. So come check me out the next time I upload one. Check me out on TikTok at Played on Repeat Pod. We have metal discussions over there all the time. I've kind of slowed down recently on posting over there just because I've slowed down on getting responses on there, so I kind of got demotivated, but I'm going to start posting on there a little bit more, especially if I start getting some more responses and stuff. But once again, thank you for watching. Please come join me on my next video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.